Before we begin this story that changed 3 lives forever, I need you to do something for me. Look at the man in this thumbnail. Look at his tired eyes, his worn-out jacket. Now, I want you to remember his face at the end of this video, because the transformation, the raw emotion, the justice of it all, it will shatter you. This isn't just a story, it's proof that the quietest acts of goodness are sometimes witnessed by the universe itself. So hit that like button right now, and let the algorithm know that a story about true, selfless kindness deserves to be seen. Now, let's go to a rainy Tuesday in October, to a quiet hospital corridor. The rain lashed against the third-floor windows of St. Augustine's Hospital, a relentless percussion to the low hum of fluorescent lights and weary silence. For Leo, the storm outside was a gentle whisper compared to the tempest in his chest. His 4-year-old daughter, Chloe, was behind one of those doors, burning up with a fever that medication seemed powerless to break. His construction shift had ended 3 hours ago, but his real work, the vigil of a single father, was in its second, terrifying day. The last of his savings had just been swallowed by the pharmacy copay, and the rent, due tomorrow, was a dark, heavy stone in his gut. He paced the hallway, his work boots squeaking on the linoleum. He felt invisible, a ghost in a stained jacket moving through a world of scrubs and sorrow. That's when he heard it, a sound so utterly out of place it cut through his panic. A raw, guttural cry of fear, followed by a shuddering, hyperventilating wail. It came from the pediatric ward's small, seldom used sunroom. Leo approached the doorway. Inside, a girl of about 10 or 11 was curled into a tight ball on a vinyl couch. Her eyes, a milky, unfocused blue, were wide with terror. A nurse knelt beside her, speaking in calm, measured tones that seemed to bounce off the girl's panic. "Maya, sweetheart, you need to breathe with me. Your mom is on her way. The power outage was just for a minute, it's back on now." But Maya was lost. Blind since birth, the sudden, complete blackness during the brief power failure, coupled with the unfamiliar hospital sounds and the absence of her mother, had hurled her into a profound sensory crisis. Her hands fluttered in front of her face as if pushing against a tangible darkness. Leo's own fear for Chloe momentarily receded, replaced by a deep, resonant ache. He understood helplessness. In the corner of the sunroom, nearly hidden by a large faux fiddle leaf fig, was an old, upright piano. A small, dusty plaque on it read, "For healing melodies." It looked as forgotten and worn out as he felt. Without thinking, drawn by an impulse deeper than reason, Leo walked past the nurse, giving her a small, reassuring nod. He sat on the creaking bench. He hadn't played since his wife, Elise, had passed away 2 years ago. The piano had been her world, his was the rough, calloused world of blueprints and girders. But for her, he'd learned. He'd learned her favorite piece. His thick, scarred fingers, so clumsy with tools just hours before, hovered over the keys. He took a shallow breath, and began. Not a complex concerto, but the gentle, flowing notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune. The first notes were hesitant, rusty, but as the familiar melody unfolded, muscle memory and emotion took over. The music was a soft, liquid light in the sterile room. Maya's frantic breathing hitched, her fluttering hands stilled, suspended in the air. Leo played on, pouring every ounce of his own worry for Chloe, his grief for Elise, his sheer exhaustion, into the music. It wasn't a perfect performance. A few notes wavered, a chord was simplified. But it was alive. It was a human hand reaching out. Through the darkness, slowly, like a flower turning toward the sun, Maya's body unclenched. The terrifying rigidity melted. She leaned her head back against the couch, tears still tracing silver paths down her cheeks, but the panic was receding, washed away by the tide of the piano. The nurse watched, her own eyes glistening, and quietly slipped from the room. Leo played the final, fading notes. The silence that followed was no longer heavy, but peaceful. He felt spent, empty, but strangely calm. Was that Clair de Lune? Maya's voice was small, husky from crying. "Yeah," Leo said, his own voice rough. "It was my wife's favorite. It sounds like what moonlight would feel like on your skin," Maya whispered. Cool, and soft, and silver. Before Leo could respond, a new voice, crisp with urgency and authority, cut from the doorway. Maya. A woman stood there, immaculate in a tailored coat, her expression a mask of aristocratic worry that shattered the moment. This was Eleanor Vance, and she had seen everything. If this story is touching your heart already, then you understand the mission of this channel. We find the light in the darkness. So please, if you're enjoying true kindness tales, subscribe and hit that bell. It costs you nothing, but it helps us build a community that believes in goodness. Now, back to the sunroom. Eleanor Vance had entered the pediatric ward like a force of nature, trailed by a hushed deference from the staff. Her driver was downstairs holding the car, her assistant was on the phone rescheduling a billion-dollar merger, but her entire world had narrowed to this hallway, to the fear that her daughter was in crisis. The guilt was a familiar, acid taste. She'd been in Tokyo. The emergency call had sent her across oceans, her private jet cutting through the storm. When she reached the sunroom doorway, her breath caught. She saw Maya, calm now, but with the ghost of recent terror still on her face. And she saw the man at the piano. He was the polar opposite of her world. His jacket was threadbare at the elbows, his jeans dusty, his posture speaking of a profound weariness. Yet, from those rough hands had come the most tender, healing sound. She heard her daughter's watery, awe-filled voice, "It sounds like what moonlight would feel like on your skin." And she saw the man's tired face soften into a smile that didn't reach his exhausted eyes, but was utterly genuine. "Yeah," he said, "it was my wife's favorite." In that instant, Eleanor's perception shifted. This wasn't a staff musician or a kindly volunteer. This was a stranger, a man who clearly carried his own burdens, who had chosen to lighten her daughters in the most beautiful way possible. She rushed to Maya, gathering her into a fierce, perfumed embrace. "My darling, I'm here. I'm so sorry." Over Maya's head, she locked eyes with Leo, who had risen awkwardly from the bench. "Thank you," she said, the words more formal than she intended, her business armor hard to shed. "That was exceptionally kind." Leo simply shrugged, shoving his hands into his pockets. She needed an anchor. The music, it was just there. He glanced toward the hallway, his thoughts visibly snapping back to his own child. "I should, my daughter." "Please," Eleanor said, her mind, always analyzing, always strategizing, beginning to whir. "Can I get your name? I'd like to properly express my gratitude." "Leo. Just Leo. It's really no trouble." He gave a small, awkward wave to Maya. "You take care, okay? Remember the moonlight." And with that, he was gone, disappearing down the corridor, back to his own private storm. Eleanor held Maya, but a part of her was already in motion. She called over the head nurse. With a quiet, undeniable authority, she asked about the kind man with the daughter. The nurse, recognizing the famous Eleanor Vance, was discreet but compassionate. "Oh, Mr. Miller, Leo, his little girl, Chloe, is in 312. Poor kid's real sick, and from what I gather, he's carrying it all alone. A real sweet man, always polite. Miller, Leo Miller, room 312. The information etched itself into Eleanor's mind. She spent the next hour focused solely on Maya, ensuring she was settled, calm, and scheduled for the best specialist consult the next day. But a resolve was hardening within her. Her life was built on metrics, on ROI, on assessing value and acting decisively. She had just witnessed an act of pure, uncalculated value. And she had seen the cost etched on Leo's face. Later that night, after Maya slept, Eleanor sat in the hushed quiet of the hospital's executive lounge. She opened her tablet. To her assistant, she sent 2 lines of instruction: run a full, discrete background on a Leo Miller, daughter Chloe, currently in St. Augustine's, room 312. Humanitarian focus. Utmost discretion. To her head of security, she sent